Welcome back to our summer survival series. We have made it to the end. We are on day 5 of our 5-part series. So if you are just jumping in and you have not listened to part 1, 2, 3, or 4, make sure you go back and listen to those. They're quick episodes that are designed to help you navigate this summer with ease and enjoyment, not just for you as the mom, but for your kids as well. So make sure you go and jump back to those to get some quick actionable tips to not only survive summer, but to truly, truly thrive. So today we are diving into one of the biggest pain points that moms and parents face in the summer, and that is when your kids come to you with the dreaded phrase of, "We're so bored." Now, this is not going to be an episode full of my tips and tricks of 10 boredom busters to fight that summer boredom or whatever. I'm actually going to shift it a little bit and talk about why boredom is a gift and why it's important to let our kids be bored. So, this has been kind of a fun topic. I stumbled on a couple different podcast episodes and a couple different articles on this as I was deciding what was going to be in the Summer Survival series. And I found an article in People from Eva Mendez who said she was very excited to implement a summer of boredom. And I was intrigued by that. And it was coming off of, their travels where they'd had a lot of things going on. They were engaged, they were learning, they were exploring, doing all of this stuff. And she thought to herself, wow, my kids have had a lot, and I think boredom would do them good. And I could not agree more. I think sometimes we, as the parents, want to stimulate our kids and always have fun activities. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, yesterday's episode was on activities to do to continue to help your kids stay learning and keeping their brains engaged during the summer. Part 2 talked about creating your summer bucket list and all of the things that you wanted to include and do through your summer. So, I'm not saying that we need to swing the pendulum one way or the other, but when your kids come to you and they have that exasperated look and they're just dying because it's so hard that they're so bored, to maybe welcome it, to maybe have a different approach to it and know that it's actually, we're going to get into this, a huge, huge benefit for them. Why it's important to let our kids be bored, how it helps their development, their creativity, their problem solving skills. There's a lot here, and I'm going to link a couple things down below so that you can go and check those out as well. So, first diving into it, I think the discomfort with boredom is actually ours, right? They come to us and they're like, "Mom, we're bored, we're bored." But we as parents often feel uncomfortable when our kids are bored, and we have that instinct to rescue them with activities or entertainment. That's even why we want to have in our back pocket being able to pull out a list of boredom busters or like a jar of popsicle sticks that have a whole bunch of different activities on them of things that they can do when they are bored. And I get it, right? As parents, our job is to rescue them a lot of the time and to teach them. And so sometimes that's such a hard part of parenting is knowing when to step back and not rescue. And I think this is one of the cases where the benefit of boredom far outweighs our own discomfort, right? Ooh, tough pill to swallow, maybe. It is for me. So maybe it is for you. But I was listening to this episode of The Happiness Lab with Dr. Laurie Santos. It is such an excellent podcast if you're looking for another one to follow or listen to. And her whole episode was overcoming her fear of boredom. My kids thought that was really funny when they saw that title on my screen in my car that you could be afraid of boredom. But she really dived into a lot of the scientific research and the data that's coming out about boredom and what it does for your brain. They talk about these different MRI scans that they were doing and doctors that were studying when you let your mind wander, what happens. And so there are so many benefits. I will link that episode down below so you can listen to it. It's really quick. It's under 20 minutes that you can get that info. And it's even shorter if you skip through the ads. Sorry, I'm not an ad hater, but skip through them and it's even quicker to get through. So let's dive into some of the benefits of boredom without getting all in the data of everything. Number one, problem solving. We know how I feel about problem solving. It is such an amazing skill to have. It's one of our family core values is not only being a problem solver, but being a creative problem solver. And boredom really helps you to have to creatively problem solve, right? The problem is you're bored out of your mind, you have nothing to do, and you need to find out something to do to fill this time that you have without someone else stepping in and doing that. So it really forces your kids to think and to get creative and to come up with solutions for their own entertainment without someone telling them what to do. This is a skill that we also talked about in the episode about chores and zones, right? Where we talked about not having a checklist that we hand our children of what we want them to do, but giving them ownership and the ability to look and notice and come up with the solutions to get their zone clean on their own. So, this problem solving, this thinking skill, there's a couple of things in the summer survival series that really helps our kids to be able to build that muscle, which is awesome. The next thing beyond problem solving that is a benefit of boredom is their creativity and imagination. So I liked this idea that boredom is the bridge between doing nothing and being creative, right? It allows your kids to use their imagination to invent new games or new stories. And here's the fun thing. I was listening to the podcast, it's 1,000 Hours Outside, I believe is what it's called. And I stumbled on just kind of like a quote from one of their episodes. I'm not sure exactly which one it is, but if I find it, I will link it below or talk about it in stories. And they talked about how it takes about 45 minutes of boredom or of being outside. I think in the episode they were talking about being outside, but it takes about 45 minutes for your imagination to kind of kick in, for like a plot to, if you ever, you're right, you see those kids out there, and if you leave them to their own devices for long enough, they get past that pain point of discomfort and complaining and their imagination kicks in. But it does take a little bit of time. It's about 45 minutes from what I was listening to and some of the different studies I pulled because I wanted to find like the actual stats here. So, allowing your kids enough time for that creativity muscle to kick in and for that imagination to kick in. Think about it with yourself too, right? We sometimes have to allow that time for our mind to wander. We have to have the ability to be distraction free, to be bored, to let our mind wander, to get creative. Have you ever tried to meditate? Is what I was thinking about. And your mind is empty. You don't have your phone, you don't have other distractions. And instead of being able to completely clear your mind, it wanders a lot. And you start thinking of all of these things. It's kind of that same thing. When you give yourself the space to be able to be bored, your imagination and creativity have time to kick in, which is awesome. Another benefit is emotional regulation, which again is such a skill, an important skill for our kids to be learning. So, just right here, right? Boredom, like giving us so many skills that our kids are going to be learning. But managing boredom teaches our kids in real time how to handle frustration, how to regulate their emotions, which is a very, very important skill. Boredom might not be super distressing, right? It's not the end of the world. It's not painful. It's not hurting you, but it's definitely not fun. And a lot of life is not fun. The older we get, the more adult things we deal with, we realize that this is true, that a lot of it is not fun. Life requires us to manage our frustrations. Life requires us as adults to regulate our emotions when things are not going our way. So, boredom is a great way to learn that skill, to teach that skill in a low stakes way, right? When we're kids, when our kids are little, they can start to problem solve and regulate and manage their frustrations. And let's be real, they're learning this skill right now, so they might not be managing it super well. You might come across tantrums, you might come across a foot stomping or a door slamming or a eye roll in the back of their head when you tell them something like, well, boring people can't be bored, or, whatever fun little quip we come up with as moms. But it is such an important skill. Boredom really is one of the best gifts we can give our kid. And I know if we tell them that and you say, I'm just giving you a gift, this is a gift, they're going to eye roll for sure. But it really is. It's that bridge between doing nothing and creativity. It's helping them learn these life skills that are going to be so important for them as they grow, right? But I get it. It can be hard. It can be stressful for us as the mom. It can maybe cause a little bit more friction when they're demanding to be entertained. We want to swoop in and save it. Trust the process. Trust that allowing boredom will lead to positive outcomes, even when it feels uncomfortable for them, and especially when it feels uncomfortable for us in the moment. Just as they're learning, we're also learning. This is trial and error. And it's not to say that you can't swoop in with ideas anytime or not save the day or give them a list of ideas to break that boredom. Boredom busters. I'm not a boredom buster hater. I think they have a great place for maybe getting those wheels turning. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the phrase from my kids, we're so bored, and I give them a list of 5 or 10 different ideas and they don't want to do any of that and stomp away. And then I give them that space, that 45 minutes or so, and they come up with something to do. Just the other day, I came downstairs and my youngest had found a cardboard box from Amazon. We all have those. And he had his container of animals and dinosaurs, and he was making his own little habitat. And then his sister saw what he was doing because she was bored as well. They went outside and collected sticks and got tape, and they made this whole little habitat. And that was born out of boredom, and that was a lot of creativity. It was also a lot of problem solving because he came inside and wanted this certain stick and had to figure out how to measure it. And he came inside with a measuring tape and was out in the garden trying to find the perfect length of a stick that he needed to fit his box. And it was a really awesome thing to see, especially as I was kind of formulating this episode. But that just goes to show the importance of letting your kids be bored, to give them the outdoor time, to give them at least that, 30 to 45 minutes for them to come up with a play scenario that they're doing for that imagination to kick in. And that gives us a pass, right, as mom to not feel like we have to be on all the time. That unstructured time is actually awesome. And to kind of not cave every time for that screen, to give them that screen. It's okay. They're going to have some pushback. They're going to have some resistance toward it. But on the other side, right, trusting the process, trusting that the positive outcomes will come. All right. So, with all of that being said, what are some tips for embracing boredom? Number one, your own mindset is what I would say is the most important thing. Thinking to yourself, it is okay for my kids to be bored. It is okay for my kids to be bored. And if we have to recite that over and over again to ourselves and say, boredom is a gift, it is teaching them life skills, it is okay for my kids to be bored. And just having that mantra running through our heads as they're throwing a little fit that they're so bored, right? But in addition to that, setting boundaries, right? Providing an environment where they can be bored without turning to screens or other instant entertainment like their phones or tablets. Encouraging outdoor play. And I know that sometimes in the summer when the temperatures are soaring, that can be a little tricky. So earlier in the mornings, outdoor play with water if it's super, super hot, or, even in the evenings. Evenings have been our awesome time for that. Encouraging your kids to get outside and giving them that freedom to explore and to create their own games and let that creativity kick in. Sometimes that means providing materials, and that's why there might be a little bit of legwork for us up front. So, having things like basic art supplies, building blocks, old clothes for dress up. But honestly, like my example just barely, he found a cardboard box and some tape and went to town on creating his own little play area for his animals and his own little habitat. It was super fun. But sometimes offering kids those materials or just having them there is great. So things to color, things to paint, things to do art with, dress up with, different types of games, board games, card games, whatever. And as we talked about in the last episode, those help with learning and keeping your brain engaged too. And then the last tip is just resisting that urge to intervene. It's uncomfortable. I know we want to rescue our kids. I get it. But resisting that urge and allowing your kids to figure it out on their own, boredom is a simple thing that is low stakes that we can allow them to figure out on their own. There are a lot of other problems in their life that we do need to swoop in and either save or be a very guiding light in the way that they're making their decisions and the way that they're handling certain scenarios that come up in their life. But we want to allow them room to to figure things out on their own in their life so that they can be functioning, capable adults in the real world. That's our job as parents. So boredom is one of those things that's low stakes. As uncomfortable as it can be, it is low stakes, and allowing them to figure it out on their own is such a gift. So I stand by it. I stand by that boredom is a gift, but I get it. It's uncomfortable. It's not fun, but it can turn into fun, right? If we allow them the time for that creativity and those problem-solving skills to kick in. Some of my favorite memories looking back on my childhood, I know are born out of boredom. Some of my crazy imaginative play that I came up with as a kid and had so much fun with came out of being desperately, desperately bored. In fact, I'm going to share a story. This is a true story. I will link the story here so you can find it. It's on History Daily. It might be a well-known fact. I don't know because I'm not a Lord of the Rings or Hobbit fan. Don't come for me if you are. But I found out that the author, J.R.R. Tolkien, wrote The Hobbit because he was incredibly, incredibly bored. So I don't know if you're as surprised as me to learn this, but he developed this whole fantasy world that is incredibly detailed as a way to escape his boring, mind-numbing drudgery of grading student essays. He was so bored out of his mind with his students' mediocre work and just sitting there grading papers that instead of doing that, he started doodling and scribbling and writing down ideas and let his mind wander. And lo and behold, he came up with The Hobbit and then The Lord of the Rings and then on and on and on and on and on. How incredible is that? And that was something that I was listening to on the Happiness Lab podcast episode on boredom that I referenced earlier, was that idea of if we are not allowing boredom, not only for our kids, but for ourselves as well, if we are not allowing boredom to be a part of our life, what things are we missing out on? What discoveries, what breakthroughs, what inventions, what stories, what movies, what art are we missing out on because we are not giving ourselves the room to be bored and to let our mind wander, right? I think that that's a real fear, maybe, if we're never bored, if we're always entertained, if we have everything at our fingertips. What amazing things that are going to come from our creativity and our problem solving are we missing out on in the future? So just something to think about. I will have that podcast link, that podcast episode linked that you can find there below, and that information on the History Daily for J.R.R. Tolkien about how he wrote The Hobbit. So I hope you have enjoyed not only this episode, but I hope you have enjoyed this entire summer survival series. I hope that you are feeling more equipped and inspired to make the most of these summer months. We have explored routines. We've created a summer vision. We've tackled chore zones and how to manage our household. We have found fun ways to encourage learning and prevent the summer slide. And we have learned how much of a gift that boredom is. I, for one, have loved these 5 days, this summer series, and I think I'm going to make a series more of a thing here on the podcast because this has been a lot of fun. I've liked showing up each and every day. I've loved getting the replies in my inbox from the emails that I'm sending out. This has been a lot of fun. So remember, the goal, even though I titled this the Summer Survival Series, I really want you to feel like you can absolutely thrive this summer, that you can create those memorable experiences with your family. So take the tips and the strategies that we've had over the last 5 days here. Take what you want to try. If you've got something that is working really well for you and your family that I did not mention or might not know about that you want to share with me or with our community, I would love that. So hop on to Instagram, hit reply on an email. I want to know what you're doing to thrive this summer. So Go out, enjoy a summer full of joy, learning, connection. Make sure you tune in next week when we get back to our regular weekly episodes. And here's to an amazing summer ahead. Thank you for hanging out with me again today. I'm so glad you pressed play. If you want to take a quick second to share this episode with someone you think would love it too, that would be amazing. If you're loving the show, make sure you go and leave a review on iTunes. Reviews are like magic for podcasts, and your review will help get this show into the ears of more amazing women just like you. And come find me over on Instagram. I'm there at positively.jessie, and I cannot wait to hang out with you some more. So until next time, have an amazing week.